We'll end with two examples, one using the biconditional rules and the other simply a two-column proof to review how we use our rules of logic in proving premises. So our first example, the pair of given premises are true, and what valid conclusion can you draw? 258 is divisible by 6 if and only if 2 and 3 are both factors of 258. So that if and only if tips us off to know that it's a biconditional, so we can go either way. And we see that 2 and 3 are both factors of 258, so that second part is true. Therefore, we know that the other statement must be true. So the conclusion we can make is that 258 is indeed divisible by 6. Because we know that 258 is divisible by 6 is like our P, and then 2 and 3 are both factors of 258 is our Q. And since it's a biconditional, we know it goes either way. P is true if and only if Q is true. What's our true statement we know? We know that Q is true. Therefore, we can make the conclusion that P is true, which is 258 is divisible by 6. Our second example is it's given to us that Q is the midpoint of PR and R is the midpoint of QS, and we need to prove that PQ equals SR. So since we need to prove it, we need to do a proof. Let's do our two-column proof. First, write down our given that Q is midpoint of PR and R is the midpoint of QS, and that the reason for that is that it is given to us. Now where can we go from there? I would go ahead and label the picture so we can see what we can get from that. So PR, I'm going to draw it right below here in red, and it's saying that Q is the midpoint of that. Now we have to remember sometimes the pictures aren't always completely accurate, and so we always have to rely on what's given to us and what we know is true. And so what we know is that if it's the midpoint, that those two sides are equivalent in length. And we know the same thing for QS. If R is the midpoint, we know that these two sides are equal. So from that, I know that PQ, that line segment, is equal to QR because that Q is the midpoint. And I also know that QR is equal to RS. And the reason I knew that is because I knew the definition of a midpoint and what that meant. Now if I think, where can I go from there? What do I know? Well, since PQ equals QR, we can, and QR equals RS, we can substitute that QR above, so we know that PQ equals, since QR is the same as RS, we could just write RS there, which is actually what we wanted to prove. And what we were doing there was substitution, because we were substituting it in. And that is exactly what we wanted to prove.